BionicDance is filmed in front of a live studio audience.
So why did Christ need to die in order for us to be saved? Well, very simply, the consequence for sin is death. Romans 6:23, for the wages of sin is death.
You know, it's funny, but I thought even going to heaven meant you had to die. And isn't hell the consequence of sin? Let's do this. Greetings, fellow space travelers. BionicDance here. Today we've got another one of those STR videos. They always star different people. I'm not even gonna bother looking up this guy's name. There'll be a link in the description if you're really all that curious. Anyway, he's gonna try to explain, try to retcon, really, the reasons Jesus had to die. And believe me, this is worse than explaining why the Klingons look different from series to series. Much worse.
Now, someone might follow up and say, well, why? Okay, but why is that the consequence? Why would that be the consequence that God has laid out? And I would say because sin is so serious. The consequence is death because sin is serious and God takes sin seriously.
Does he? Does he really? Even if we're talking venial sins and not mortal ones, some of them are patently ridiculous, like not mixing fabrics or not eating shellfish. If that's God taking sin seriously, what does God joking around look like?
Now, I think the judge analogy is helpful here. Think about a judge who has a criminal in front of him who's been convicted of a crime. Let's say the crime is murder.
Murder seems a bit extreme, doesn't it? Let's say the crime is jaywalking.
And the judge says, okay, you know what? I'm going to fine you $100 and then you can go. You're guilty, but just a $100 fine, you're free to go. We would all look at that and go, wait a second. That's not just, right? That's not justice. That punishment doesn't fit that crime.
God apparently has only 3 punishments as far as I can tell: heaven, hell, or purgatory. And according to the Catholic Church, purgatory is kind of like hell's waiting room. There's also limbo, but that's a whole other can of worms. Despite being part of hell, purgatory is apparently a place of purification to prep naughty people for heaven if they don't deserve hell. Except that some faith traditions don't believe that. They just think it's like a lesser eternal damnation. Point is, God's punishment options are pretty limited and are understood to be a little bit on the eternal, forever, until the end of time kind of thing. So if you want to talk about punishments not fitting the crime, this is a damn good place to start. This is why I compare murder to jaywalking. You get caught murdering, they'll throw the book at you. You're probably punished for the rest of your life, if not outright executed. But get caught jaywalking, you might get a ticket, or even just a warning, and then it's over. Life goes on. The punishments fit the crime. But God doesn't seem to have that sense of proportion or justice. Do something he doesn't like, often things that hurt nobody, and your punishment is forever. Oh, I suppose you could repent and get forgiven, but how is that justice, getting off scot-free with only an apology?
When we look at the issue of sin and the consequences, if God let us off the hook, like that judge who let that murderer off the hook, justice would not be satisfied.
So how is justice satisfied if the person punished is not the one who committed the crime? Sandra gets caught murdering a guy, but hey, Dewey's going to serve her sentence for her. Sound fair to you? And why should a death be necessary? Or rather, why should another death be necessary? Aren't Adam and Eve, dead already? They're the ones who committed the sin, not us. Do you think it's justice to face punishment for the misdeeds of your great-great-grandfather? How does that make any sense? If the punishment is going to fit the crime, the actual perpetrator being the one punished is part of that fit. Otherwise, it's another injustice being committed.
And since the consequence of sin is death, death is what was required to satisfy the justice of God. And so that is why Jesus had to die to save us.
Okay, but reading through the Bible and doing online research, it seems that the wage of sin isn't physical death, but rather the soul going kaputski, eternal death, whether that means being sent to hell for all eternity or just winking out of existence entirely, depending on who you ask. So even assuming that everything else you've said is true, Jesus never should have been resurrected or sent to heaven. In fact, if he decided to take our punishment for us, Jesus should probably be roasting forever in hell. So while this explanation sounds great on the surface, it takes, 15 minutes of research to see just how wrong it is. If wishful thinking trumped studying, I'd have a spaceship by now. Sorry. Until next time, fellow space travelers, this is BionicDance saying don't run on automatic. Instead, please think. You've got two choices. You can rate this video and share it everywhere across social media, or I can send my minions after you. Choose wisely.